Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Earlier this week, President Bola Tinubu forwarded a request to the National Assembly to approve fresh external borrowings of $21.5 billion as part of the federal government's borrowing plan for 2025 and 2026. According to an official communication from the president, the loans, which include a 757.98 billion naira from the domestic debt market and an additional $2 billion foreign currency bond to settle outstanding pension liabilities, will be utilized across all sectors of the Nigerian economy, but with specific focus on agriculture and infrastructure. Arise correspondent Omar Bazwaye tells us more.
As part of Nigeria's borrowing plans for the next 2 years, President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday forwarded a new external borrowing request to both chambers of the National Assembly. First is a request to borrow $21.5 billion that the government intends to inject into all sectors of the economy, but with specific targets on agriculture and infrastructure. The government is also eyeing additional 2.19 billion euro, 15 billion Japanese yen, and 65 million euro grants from international lenders and donor agencies.
The House of Representatives is invited to note that the 2025-2026 borrowing plan cut across all sectors with specific emphasis on infrastructure, agriculture, health, education, water supply, growth, security, and employment generation.
We are looking at requests for approval of the federal government 2025 to 2026 external borrowing rolling plan in the total facility and projects and programs under the borrowing plan of $21.5 billion and Japanese yen.
President Tinubu also requested the approval of the National Assembly for the issuance of federal government bonds valued at roughly 757.98 billion naira from the domestic debt market and additional $2 billion foreign currency bond to settle outstanding pension liabilities. The $2 billion is to be raised through the Debt Management Office.
I write to request the kind approval of the National Assembly for capital raising of up to $2 billion United States dollars in the domestic debt market towards the implementation of the Presidential Executive Order on Foreign Currency Denominated Financial Instrument Local Issuance Program.
President Bola Tinubu called on the leadership of the National Assembly to accelerate legislative action on the loan request, which he says are crucial to stabilize the economy and meet all of government's obligations.
The Senate is in the light of the removal of the fuel subsidy and its impact on the national economy. Approval is sought for the external borrowing plan. I want to emphasize that the projects and programs included in the borrowing plan were selected based on thorough technical and economic evaluations, as well as their anticipated contributions to the socio-economic development of the country.
As of September 2024, Nigeria's total public debt stood at 142.3 trillion naira. But with the latest loan request from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, there are concerns that the country's total debt profile could increase as high as 190 trillion naira before the end of 2025. Omar Bazwaye, Arise News.
Rafael, that seems to be the number one concern on the minds of several Nigerians and analysts included with regards to this borrowing. You know, is the borrowing too much when we place it right beside revenue growth? Of course, there are other issues as well. One of them being the fact that, you know, during his speech, the president's speech, that was, I believe, a week ago? Yeah, a week ago, where he was just basically speaking about the midterm and, you know, a lot of progress that has been made with this administration. He did highlight the fact that there's nothing wrong with the fact that, you know, people are getting into the APC party, people are joining, let's welcome them, let's sweep them out, in quote. Now, what does this mean when it comes to the the disbursement of resources. People concerned about the fact that are people going to have equal access, the several states, will they all have equal access to these resources that are being made available? Of course, there's also transparency, there's accountability. Now, we've seen the list of projects, or do I say sectors, that will be influenced by these loans. But in these sectors, what are these specific projects that will happen? To avoid situations where there are possibly ghost projects or question marks as to the exact projects that will happen, Nigerians are then asking to know what projects are going to be serviced by these loans. So there are numerous questions, but in the face of rising inflation, I guess this may just be another way of easing the burden that Nigerians are still dealing with, cost of living crisis amongst many others.
Well, I mean, you're correct contextually, but the core point is after 2 years, and at a time that the federal government has just paid off more than $3 billion to the IMF, that it looks like the government will need a total of $21.5 billion in the next 2 years, 2025 and 2026. And frankly speaking, it looks like it's a huge amount, to be borrowing. But then where we are, and given the fact that the sort of budget that we will be running, the one we're running for this year, and of course the one that we will be running for next year, the resources at home and the revenues being generated cannot conveniently carry them, and therefore you will have to borrow more. Most countries, if not all countries of the world, do borrow. I think the essential thing that people are always asking is that when you do borrow, do we have the capacity in terms of GDP to a debt ratio to GDP to carry it? And of course, what the government spokespersons have always said is that we're not doing too badly in that regard. And of course, a good signal will be what happened to a loan that was taken in 2020 and then paid back by 2025. If we break it down, why it is a bit scary is when you look at it in Naira terms. Given the fact that from DMO, Debt Management Office, the total debt profile of the country as of December last year, before the IMF loan was paid off, stood at 144.6 trillion naira as of December 31st of 2024. That's a staggering amount. If you break it down further, external borrowings, which is the whole point of the $21.5 billion that the government is borrowing this time around, stood as at that time, December, at 70.2 trillion. And domestic borrowing, which is where for me, it's a bit of a good news, that domestic borrowing is more than external borrowing. It means that, the mere fact that the government is able to borrow internally means that there are economic activities that can fund, such debt profile. And that's at 74.3 trillion naira. I see that there's also a component in what will be that will come from domestic bonds for the 21.5 billion that, in addition to 21.5 billion external borrowing. That will be around 757.98 billion naira. You can't run away from this sort of a thing if you are dealing with a 54 trillion naira budget and your expected revenue is hardly up to half of what you are dealing with. How would this money being borrowed would therefore be used? And the government is very clear about it. One, they will need to deal with mounting pension funds that they need to take care of. But more importantly, area of infrastructure, area of agriculture. You can look at, I listened to the interview by Dave Umahi, Minister of Works, and when, questions were posed at him as to the gigantic project of Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, the first component of it, 47 kilometers, and it says that it's about 1.something trillion. Only about 30% of it is coming from the federal government. Others are expected to come from loans and from development partners, but they haven't even gotten it. But they are proceeding. What the federal government is requesting for, which the National Assembly is considering, for the 21.5 billion is just a plan. The likelihood that federal government would get this entire money is not 100%. And whatever we get, what is important is that after 2 years, what will be the long-term plan to pay back and to judiciously use what you are borrowing. But as I said again, I like the fact that a good chunk of the money ultimately will come from local. And maybe that's something to say about the economy, if bonds can be, fully subscribed and people are able to borrow internally. Compare what the states are borrowing, the exposure to that of the federal government is quite low compared to the federal government. Again, this suggests that, yes, these figures might be huge, but they are not too stifling. They are not too bad. What is important at the end of the day will be that use them judiciously and have a plan, to pay back. So that's about it.
I agree. I think just, again, echoing something that the president said, he said, show me who can reform Nigeria in 2 years. So I think there's still the place of, just waiting to see. But of course, these questions continue to abound as to seeing how these resources will be used.
Reforms are a work in progress, and borrowing and paying back, are part of of the program. We'll see how it goes. All right, we'll proceed. Peace and reconciliation may now be considered remote for the crisis-ridden main opposition, People's Democratic Party, following a fresh twist in the lingering internal battle for the soul of the party. This comes as Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, said that he has withdrawn from all the existing peace arrangements within the party. We have details in this next report.
In a strongly worded statement released earlier today, Wike accused party stakeholders, particularly Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State and Governor Peter Mbah of Enugu, of serial betrayal and alleged a calculated disruption of reconciliation efforts. Wike says a gentleman's agreement reached at the Abuja residence of former President of the Senate, Bukola Saraki, was already crudely violated even before the party's reconciliation committee, led by Saraki, could begin its work. He lamented that despite the Supreme Court's judgment affirming Samuel Anyao as the party's national secretary, Governor Makinde had allegedly connived with his Enugu state counterpart to organize a Southeast leaders meeting to blackmail the party with a threat to pull out of the party if the party upheld the decision of the Apex Court. Vowing to fight to the finish, the minister went further to accuse the duo of instigating a rebellion within the party's leadership, pointing to a letter issued by the Deputy National Secretary summoning a National Executive Committee meeting, an act that Wike describes as illegal and contrary to agreements already reached. He also referenced a failed Congress in Jos Plateau State on Saturday, which was allegedly aborted after INEC refused to attend due to improper documentation, another fallout of what he termed deliberate sabotage by party's insiders.
All right, so that's, again, yet another bombshell from Wike. You can't get enough of bombshells from Nyesom Wike. I'm not too sure why the Saraki-led Committee for Reconciliation, trying to save the sinking boat of the PDP, thinks that redemption lies within the corridors of Wike in Abuja. I think he ought to be very obvious to anybody who is even remotely connected to the PDP affairs that Wike will not allow PDP to work. I'm not sure if that's the charge for him, but then if you have a key member of your party, an immediate past governor, and then an important minister in an opposition government who has declared that his own party cannot and will not produce the president in 2027 because he will support the man who has given him a job, even though he's with the other party. It has to be obvious to you that he will do everything within his powers to frustrate peace efforts within the PDP. The question, therefore, will be that is it that powerful for two reasons? One, to continue to cause havoc within his party, that you can't deal with him, and then is it too powerful that you can't just kick him out of the party. I've listened to people like former Governor Sule Lamido saying that he will not attend any PDP meetings until Wike is removed. Wike's soul has left the party. What he's doing basically is to continue to punish PDP and indirectly punish Atiku Abubakar for the events of 2023 when he lost getting the presidential ticket and also lost getting the the running mate ticket to Atiku. I think that's basically what he's doing. But then when he now turns around to blame his former allies, Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, and then the governor of Enugu State, I mean, they are not answerable to you. You were once a governor, you wielded enormous power. If Seyi Makinde has the interest to run for president and to pick the ticket of his party, you did the same thing while you were about leaving, Rivers State. Why should it be a big deal? Even though there are many who are expressing concern that, can we even trust Seyi Makinde, who says that he would like to be president, even though he has not announced formally. Is he playing a script? Will he be a placeholder for the same person that Wike, is trying to kill himself, over for his cause? So it's tough for PDP. I think that PDP will further disintegrate if care is not taken. We see that what Pastor Umueno of Akwa Ibom is saying, that I like this party, but I know that the problems in the party will be injurious to my own ambition. What if I win the ticket on the platform of the PDP and I win the election, and then somebody goes to court and says that the person who signed my papers, was not the correct faction because of the troubles with the PDP? That it is better to go and run where, there will be safety and assurance. It looks a bit self-serving, but then there's a bit of truth in what the governor of Akwa Ibom is saying. So for me, for anybody who's thinking that they can appease Wike for peace to return to PDP, I think that they may be living in La La Land. It will not happen.
La La Land.
Fortunately or unfortunately, it will not happen.
Listen, I think that for me, the whole idea of this factionalization is what a lot of these political parties are. They're struggling with this right now. We see this happening in Labour Party. We're seeing it happening in PDP. Also, the idea of the party being built around one person. It's a problem, clearly, for the party, and they cannot seem to shake away from it. I used to think that they would, in fact. We've had several interviews on Arise, and we've had several people just make generic statements like, Wike will be punished, or Wike will be removed. And, moving forward towards the Congress, which, at the last conversation, I remember, was heading towards August. But it cannot happen if there's still the national chairman issue, the national secretary issue. If they cannot agree on who it will be, then the Congress cannot convene.
They won't agree because that's part of the charge for those who do not want PDP to work.
Exactly. So my thing is, it's a common issue now. We're seeing this happening in PDP with its peculiarities, with Wike now saying no and yes, and just holding the party technically hostage. We're seeing this happening again with Labour Party, even at the local level. We saw the issues with the current chairman of the caretaker committee, that's Rotimi, if I'm not mistaken, coming to basically say he doesn't understand what's going on at the local level. And these are conversations that we are having every other day. And I just want to know how do these things resolve themselves? Who is going to resolve it? Who is the person that will say, they're going to be the voice of reasoning within these parties to put them in order? Because at this point in time, I'm really not sure who that voice is. I used to think I did. I used to think I knew who it was for PDP, who it was for Labour Party. But right now, I'm not even sure there's any respect for the voices of reasoning.
Why it is so sad for PDP is also because it is the only, more or less the only legacy party remaining, from the 1999 club. When you had the PDP, right, when you had the AD, when you had the ANPP. I think it started with APP, first. APP, AD, of course, disintegrated into, more or less into AC, and then ACN, and then ultimately they have all now dissolved into APC. So PDP is the only legacy party remaining from 1999. And with this happening to it, won't it be a shame if things go, totally irredeemable. And it's looking like it is a bit irredeemable.
What do we say that? You did mention the governor, Umoeno, and him saying that, please, let me go where they have some sense of stability. Because all these factions, they can come and say, but imagine if these factions, we always talk coalition, imagine if these factions come together. Do you think they will be strong enough to put together the soul of PDP?
Factions within the PDP?
Factions within the PDP.
It would be an idealistic thing for it to happen. But for the 2027 elections?
No, we know. Not for 2027, for the future.
I doubt.
Anyway, let's move on to this. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board this week released the results of the 2025 UTME receipt examinations that it conducted for 336,845 candidates whose initial results were affected by technical glitches, according to the examination body. In the latest results publications, only 1% of the candidates were recorded to have scored above 200. A total of 21,082 candidates, representing 93%, were recorded absent without explanation. JAMB had scheduled a mop-up exam opportunity to all absentees and others who missed the initial date of the exams. The board attributed the low performance to widespread irregularities involving candidates, schools, and computer-based test centers. It also confirmed no high scorers in the cancelled UTME sessions across 5 states in the southeast of the country and Lagos, with most candidates scoring below 200. Now, following deliberations with external examiners, JAMB approved the release of the withheld results of underage candidates as well as those involved in online misconduct, stating that it was a one-time waiver. For me, I'm just thinking of the students who are at the center of this situation, the ones who have studied hard, the ones who have really tried to see how, they can follow the system that we have in place in Nigeria. Of course, the educational system is once you're done with secondary school, you write JAMB in order to get admission into the public universities. Of course, there's also the post-UTME at some point. I don't know if that's still in, there's also the post-UTME. And these are prerequisites for getting into school. Now, the cutoff mark for a lot of universities is well above 200, especially if you're trying to study many of the courses in the top 5, engineering, medicine, and the likes. So with this JAMB result, what does that mean for the students now? Initially, the issue was technical glitches, but what is the reason for this? Is it on the students or is it on the part of JAMB?
Well, JAMB listed, what is suspected to be the reasons, irregularities, issues with, at the computer-based centers. But I think the most worrying part will be the 93%, absentees of those who were meant to retake the exam, but just basically didn't bother. It's either they didn't get, the notifications, or like we did mention here on this program, it's unfair to have to ask students who will write JAMB to assemble at 6:30 a.m. at, centers that are quite far from their, residences and from their schools. I think that at the end of the day, part of what JAMB will need to re-examine is beyond just the technical glitches. Like we said here the other time, technical glitches happen all over the world, in America, in India, where they are far better, ahead of us in terms of, IT and technology. But then it's the human organization around what JAMB is doing that is important. And Professor Isha Akolede, yes, a brilliant person, has done well in many areas of JAMB, but it's obvious that he needs assistance now, in many areas. I am not particularly surprised overall in terms of the number of candidates scoring more than 200 cutoff mark, out of 400. Not be more than 20 to 25%. Interestingly, that has been the pattern in the last 10 years of JAMB, even when there were no glitches and there were no issues, with JAMB. So we will have to worry about the curriculum and the type of students that we are churning out of secondary schools, private, particularly public schools. At every time, 70 to 75% of them do not, score up to up to 200 marks. But more importantly and interestingly will be that it is not the problem of JAMB is beyond JAMB. If you look at what is happening with the NYSC now,
yes,
those who have graduated, who passed JAMB 4 or 5 years ago, who are now graduating, the carrying capacity of the camps for the NYSC is so low that people who graduated since last year are still waiting for their call-up, letters to go and serve. Which therefore means that after graduation, you probably will have waited for a whole year before you can go and serve. No incomes, you are wasting away. Not because they are not ready to serve, not because the schools, have not approved that they have graduated, but because JAMB cannot, NYSC cannot take all of them. So as we are worrying about the fact that JAMB is not able to pass many people, what if they do pass many people and they are graduating at the same time? It will come back to NYSC that maybe only 10% of people graduating will be able to go and serve immediately after they graduate, and then you have to wait.
You just sit at home, you wait. So I
so
think
issues that the Ministry of Education on the whole will have to deal with holistically to make sure that, the lives of our young ones who are preparing to go into the job market is not frustrated even from the schools.
Where they waste years, I think NYSC definitely should also be reviewed.
All right. Well, we move very quickly to yet another story. Leaders of the economic community of West African states have pledged their renewed commitment to advancing the region as the bloc this week marked its 50th anniversary here in Lagos. The gathering served as a moment of reflection on the journey of the regional body and a platform to chart a path to its future. Our rights correspondent, Punariman Benjamin, reports.
Established on May 28, 1975, in Lagos, Nigeria, then the nation's capital, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, was born from the vision of 15 West African heads of state. Cabo Verde joined 2 years later in 1977, while Mauritania withdrew shortly after the treaty was signed. Nigeria played a pivotal role in the formation of the regional bloc under the leadership of then military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon. The founding goals were clear: to promote economic cooperation, enhance living standards, ensure regional integration, and drive development. Over the years, ECOWAS also took on a security mandate, responding to military takeovers and regional conflicts through its peacekeeping initiatives. As part of its Golden Jubilee, ECOWAS unveiled Vision 2050, a new development roadmap that replaces the outgoing Vision 2020, themed Stronger Together for a Brighter Future. The commemorative ceremony drew current and former heads of state, diplomats, international partners, and other dignitaries from around the world. Nigeria's president and chair of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, stressed the urgency of deeper unity, political will, and collective economic action to secure a prosperous future for the region.
In 1975, our founding father leaders envisioned a West Africa where borders unite rather than divide, a region of free movement, thriving trade, and peaceful coexistence. That vision is still alive today. Work together towards peace, prosperity, and justice.
In a heartfelt address, former Nigerian head of state and one of ECOWAS' founding fathers, General Yakubu Gowon, reflected on the ideals behind the 1975 Treaty of Lagos and called for a rededication to its original principles.
In recent years, we have witnessed the troubling resurgence of military coups in some of our member states. We thought that was over, but it seems as though personal ambition drives some people to do the wrong thing. But let me say this: belief in democracy is what I'm now advising.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Umar Toure, spotlighted the bloc's notable achievement, such as the free movement of people.
This Golden Jubilee does not mark an end. It represents a new beginning, the renewal of a promise of unity, integration, and shared prosperity for many more years. It is beautiful and wonderful to be together, because only together we can create the conditions for a brighter future for our region.
Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, described the next 50 years as a pivotal opportunity for regional transformation.
We need ECOWAS more than ever to meet the challenge of unfiltered data, unregulated cryptocurrency, AI, climate change, organized crime, cyber slavery, and human trafficking, and violent extremism.
Despite current difficulties, including the withdrawal of some member countries, the spirits at the ceremony remain hopeful. West African leaders reaffirmed their commitment to unity, cooperation, and a shared vision for a peaceful and a prosperous region. There is a fresh commitment by the ECOWAS leaders to ensure ECOWAS is more united, more organized, with inclusivity that is driven by its own terms. Punaraman Benjamin, Arise News.
Well, Kachi, I think that was an important occasion, ECOWAS at 50. A lot of people had expressed wonder that if the ECOWAS Secretariat is in Abuja, why bring the celebration to Lagos? You know, but they need to realize that it happened here in Lagos exactly 50 years ago. And I think that Nigeria deserves to also celebrate, given the fact that the man who was responsible, you know, for ECOWAS to come on board in terms of the treaties that were signed 50 years ago here in Lagos is still alive. You know, the head of state now, General Yakubu Gowon, who also gave, you know, a jocular, brilliant speech at the NIA before they moved to a hotel for celebration. And also, of course, you know, our own president is also the chair, you know, of ECOWAS at this time. So I think that's an important moment. It is also a time to reflect. Yes, ECOWAS has tried a bit in keeping us together, but then the areas where ECOWAS is failing, because the celebration, for example, didn't include Mali, didn't include Niger, didn't include Burkina Faso. Even at that, there are two others that are still like, you know, pseudo-military, Guinea-Bissau, Chad. At the time that you are celebrating ECOWAS, Ivory Coast, you know, almost experienced a coup, you know, so there are areas where ECOWAS will need to work for the next 50 years that they are now calling Vision 2050.
Vision 2050. I mean, we saw...
Congratulations to them anyway.
Of course, we saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs on Arise News earlier this week, Yusuf Tuga, just basically highlighting some of what you have mentioned as well. And I think Bimbai did ask a question about what ECOWAS is without Niger, without Mali, you know, without Burkina Faso. And he said, well, some of the things that have happened should not have happened, but of course, constitutional differences have allowed for these to happen. But it doesn't stop the policies, it doesn't stop the progress that ECOWAS seeks to pursue within this time. And he mentioned several progressions that have also happened within ECOWAS as it pertains to, let me just get that correctly. He did say ECOWAS Liberation Scheme. He talked about the ECOWAS Liberation Scheme. He talked about SIGMAT, digitized tracking system for customs, amongst other things. So I think so far it's been great conversations, and it's definitely been an interesting 50 years of ECOWAS. Well, that's all on the week that was today.